Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're going to untangle a really complex geopolitical narrative. We're going to connect the dots between dictators, massive global power shifts, and simmering regional instability, all by digging into a single, dense source.
So, to make this all easy to follow, we've broken the analysis down into 4 key parts. We'll kick things off with the dictator's playbook. Then we'll look at a region on edge. After that, we'll zoom out to see the global power shifts. And finally, we'll zero in on Pakistan's political crossroads.
All right, let's dive in. This source frames its entire argument with a fascinating historical story, the strange and, frankly, bizarre case of the Ugandan dictator, Idi Amin.
The source paints a really vivid picture of Amin's behavior. We're talking about a man who would walk his pet cheetah on a leash, award himself military medals he absolutely did not earn, and, in one famous moment, divorced his wife live on television.
Now, the crucial point the source is making here isn't just about sharing some wild historical trivia. No. This is a deep dive into the psychology of power. What happens to a person when there are absolutely no checks, no balances on what they can do?
And this is where the source makes a direct and pretty provocative connection. It draws a line from Amin's self-awarded titles all the way to a social media post by Donald Trump. This comparison, it's the foundation for the core argument of this entire explainer.
And all of this brings us to a central concept, something we're going to call the power paradox. It's this idea that extreme power doesn't actually lead to stability. In fact, it leads to volatility and erratic behavior. This is the lens the source uses to analyze everything that comes next.
Okay, so how does this power paradox actually play out in the real world? Well, the source points us straight to recent events in South Asia as some prime examples of this kind of high-stakes instability.
First up, the source details the failure of India's PSLV-62 rocket. Apparently, it just went out of control during its launch. Now, this comes right after a similar incident, and the source claims this is raising some serious international concerns, showing how even technological ambitions can add to regional tension.
But the instability isn't just technological. The source then shifts our focus to Pakistan, highlighting a deadly terrorist attack. It paints a really grim picture of the Tank district, where state control allegedly just collapses at night, creating this constant state of fear. Now, these two events are obviously very different, but they're presented by the source as symptoms of the same core problem, a region teetering right on the edge.
Okay, so from these regional flare-ups, the source zooms way out, arguing that these exact same power dynamics are playing out on the global scale, and they're seriously shaking up the relationship between the United States and other world powers.
This slide is a perfect illustration of brinkmanship. You know, that dangerous game of pushing things right to the absolute edge of disaster. The source reports this incredibly complex dance. Just look at the sequence. First, you've got massive pro-government demonstrations in Iran. Then, this dizzying back and forth from the US, claiming Iran wants to talk, then threatening an attack. And it's all met by Iran's defiant reply, "We're ready for either war or peace."
And right in the middle of all this, Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Khamenei, drops this incredibly powerful historical statement. He compares the American president to fallen tyrants from ancient and modern history, leaving absolutely no doubt about where they stand.
And you know what? It's not just Iran. The source gathers more evidence of this broader global pushback. You've got China calling out the US over Greenland, Italy suggesting it's time to start talking with Russia again, and Cuba just defiantly brushing off US warnings.
So when you see this flurry of defiance coming from multiple corners of the globe, it leads the source to ask a really fundamental question. Are we actually watching the early stages of a completely new world order being born? All right, for our final piece of the puzzle, the source brings its theme of power and contradiction all the way down from the global stage, right into the thick of internal Pakistani politics, focusing on the actions of political figure Sohail Afridi. This is a pretty interesting one. The source highlights this really stark contradiction. So, on one hand, you have Afridi reportedly telling a university official to stop speaking in English. But on the other hand, his very own official comments in the National Mausoleum's guestbook are written in, you guessed it, perfect English.
But the source claims this goes way beyond just language. It gets into a serious policy disagreement, where Afridi publicly questions the evidence of terrorism coming from Afghanistan. And this, according to the source, puts him directly at odds with the national security establishment and the evidence they say has been presented to international bodies.
So think about it. We've gone from a dictator's pet cheetah to a superpower's global threats and all the way to a local politician's contradictions.
The source weaves a single compelling thread through it all: the volatile and unpredictable nature of power. And that leaves us with this final, crucial question to think about.